As a person who holds a genuine interest in the history of Rome and its rulers, I feel a certain obligation to share with you the story of one of Rome's most prestigious and well-known emperors, along with one of its worst. Many plebeians today know of Caligula as Rome's mad emperor, an individual solely responsible for the eventual downfall of the greatest empire that has ever graced this earth. This shared view of Caligula is nothing short of the truth. Caligula's actions and poor leadership were the cause of the gradual collapse of Rome's infrastructure, economy, and presence in the world at the time. Unfortunate as it is, Caligula's reign will always be remembered as one of chaos and treachery. And while he is guilty of all these accusations, it is imperative to understand Caligula's life, how an innocent child was taught to live in a world of constant fear and paranoia by those who threatened his life every step of the way. Combined with his traumatic childhood and multiple decades of sadness and grief, it is easier for us to understand exactly why Caligula acted the way he did, and how his actions led him and the Roman Empire down a dangerous and inescapable path. Under the tyrannical rule of the current emperor Tiberius, the story of Caligula begins on the roads of Rome and the battlefields of the empire's legions. Born in 12 Anno Domini by his mother Agrippina the Elder and the great Roman general Germanicus, Caligula traveled across Rome with his father while he carried out his countless military campaigns. Being born into a household of great prestige and power, Caligula's father Germanicus was the nephew of the current emperor Tiberius, a familial connection that would weigh heavy on Caligula. From as early as he could remember, Caligula shouldered great expectations from his family and the world around him. Due to his shared blood with Tiberius, Germanicus was to be next in line to the throne, a position that threatened the emperor, who wished for his son Drusus to succeed him upon his death. Therefore, while on the borders of the war-torn Gaul, or present-day Germany, Tiberius had Germanicus poisoned and murdered in order to secure the throne for his son. Upon returning to Rome, Caligula and his family were seen as the rightful heirs to the throne in the eyes of the people, which further threatened Tiberius, causing him to exile Caligula's mother, imprison and execute his older brothers, and keep him and Caligula and his younger sisters under a perpetual house arrest with his grandmother. Many years pass, and as Caligula grows into a young man, he lives in the constant fear that he and his sisters may be murdered by the emperor, being a constant threat in his eyes. After such a chaotic and traumatic childhood, it is easier for us to see how Caligula's drastic and destructive behavior later in life were caused by such a toxic upbringing. After the sudden death of his son Drusus, Tiberius grows paranoid of a potential usurping, and flees Rome to the distant isle of Capri in order to preserve his place on the throne and find himself a new heir. Knowing of his precarious situation, Tiberius orders Caligula to be sent to Capri to teach him the ways of emperor, with him being the only option at the time. After 6 long years on Capri, Caligula finds his right to throne threatened by Tiberius's grandson, Gemellus. Under a considerable deal of stress while on Capri, the already unstable Caligula learns of the death of his mother, and in a fit of rage, murders Tiberius after he and Gemellus are declared co-heirs to the throne. After nullifying the will of Tiberius, with the help of the head of the Praetorian Guard, Macro, Caligula claims the throne and becomes the sole emperor of Rome. In order to rid himself of his competition, Caligula adopts Gemellus as his son, having him served by his side while in power. After nearly a decade of lacking an emperor, Caligula returns to Rome as an incredibly popular ruler, being the son of the great Germanicus and the murderer of the wretched Tiberius. He is immediately seen as the ideal emperor in the eyes of the people. Seeking peace with the empire and the Senate, Caligula destroys all traces of Tiberius's reign and writes new legislation and drafts new policies, gaining the favor of Rome's residents and ushering in an era of peace for a short time. However, Caligula's era of prosperity didn't last long, as he was soon struck down with a sudden case of brain fever that put him into a coma, which he quickly recovered from. However, Despite the efforts to contain word of his dangerous affliction, Caligula's political opponents start to close in on the throne, knowing the emperor's rule may not last with his ailment. Believing that his illness may cost him the throne or even kill him, Caligula's paranoia grows, and fearing that people may be plotting to remove him, much like Tiberius, he begins to execute and eliminate anyone who poses a threat to his position. In order to preserve his power, Caligula has the head of the Praetorian Guard, the aforementioned Macro, murdered, and has his adopted son Gemellus thrown into prison, and eventually forces him to commit suicide, knowing he has the potential to take the throne from him. Knowing his days as emperor could be numbered, in an extremely drastic move to secure himself an heir, Caligula starts an incestuous relationship with his three sisters in order to procure himself a son. While I'm here to explain Caligula's history, and perhaps even justify his irrational behavior during his time as emperor, at no point in time do I condone Caligula's inexcusable relationship with his sisters, even if it was to maintain his bloodline and its presence on the throne. Not long after Caligula starts his vile behavior with his sisters, Drusilla, his middle sister, falls ill while pregnant with his child and dies before the baby is born. After losing yet another close relationship within his family, no pun intended, Caligula is yet again reminded of his volatile past, losing his father, mother, most trusted friend and allies, and now his sister. He continues to spiral into a frenzy of bad decisions and irrational actions that continue to paint him in a negative light in our eyes. It is at this time that Rome begins to suffer from the emperor's decisions. Due to his extremely luxurious lifestyle, Caligula has bled the empire's coffers dry, and now poses as a threat to the economy of the empire. Knowing his danger to Rome, Caligula's remaining sisters and the late Drusilla's husband Lepidus form a plot to kill Caligula, knowing that their lives may be at stake under his rule. Fortunately for Caligula, they are caught in the act before they get the chance to execute their plan. By being betrayed by his own family, Caligula has done away with nearly all his allies and can trust no one. Not long afterwards, he has Lepidus executed and sent his sisters into exile, never to return to Rome again. With Caligula living an increasingly lavish lifestyle, hosting glamorous parties and building a vast number of statues and buildings across the empire, he continues to plunge Rome's finances into the red. And with the Senate continually opposing his actions, Caligula has a great number of wealthy senators executed and claims their wealth for the empire to exacerbate his drain on Rome's reserves. Knowing he must win the favor of the empire and its people, Caligula proposes an invasion of Britannia in hopes it may stimulate the economy and preserve his position as emperor. However, due to the poorly timed invasion at the beginning of the winter, Caligula returns to Rome empty-handed, having gained nothing from his reckless campaign. Fearing for their lives, members of the Senate hatch a plot with Caligula's uncle, Claudius, his trusted advisor, to murder the emperor and end his reign of terror before they lose their lives as well. Finally, in the year 41 AD, Caligula is murdered by the head of the Praetorian Guard and Claudius, who soon claims the throne for himself after his nephew's death. Many of us today remember Caligula as a tyrannical, rash, mad, and impulsive ruler that brought in a reign of devastation within the Roman Empire. And in many ways, this is true. However, when we realize the situation he was in and the horrible hand he was dealt at a very young age, it is easy to see how Caligula's behavior would be influenced by his tumultuous past. Long live the Roman Empire.